Hi there, boys and girls. It is good to see you again. We're in the month of August, aren't we? Yeah. Pretty soon you'll be heading back to school. I'll bet you're excited about that. Well, probably some of you might be. It gets tiring sometimes. You're away from your friends, although you may see some friends at birthday parties this summer, and maybe you went to some of the amusement parks with your friends or had a birthday party. I know that my one granddaughter's going to have a birthday party this week, and she lives way down in Virginia, but she's going to have a birthday party, and she's looking forward to some of her friends coming, and then we're going to go down to visit them towards the end of August, and the three girls down there are going to have a birthday party together while we're there, but they'll have their small little individual parties in this month of August and the 1st of September. So there are times that we get together with people, and of course you've been growing. My goodness, when you go back to school, you may be surprised at how tall you've grown and how tall some others have grown. And it doesn't take long to start getting those growth spurts, and all that's a part of it. But talking about growth spurts, I've got a hat that I've got to put on here, and I'm going to see if you can tell me what this hat is all about. Okay. This is an Amishman's hat. All right, they wear. I've kind of been a little rough on it. It's gotten broken a little bit, but this is an Amishman's hat. I'm not sure an Amishman makes it because it's got a sweatband sewn in the front. Now, I don't know if they know how to use sweatband. There are sewing machines and all that, but now maybe they do. But they may have them made for them. Well, Amish don't do a lot of jobs. Now, George here, he's a truck driver. You won't find an Amish man who's a truck driver. I did know an Amish man who was a horse racer. He worked in one of my churches. Well, he didn't work in my church. One of my people raced horses, and he had an Amishman. He'd come in his plain clothes to the house with his buggy, and then they would load up the horses on the trailer and go up to the racetrack. And boy, did he put on fancy clothes then. They were shiny clothes. They weren't acceptable in the Amish community, but for racing, he wore those fancy clothes, and he would race those horses, and he loved to race horses, and all that. And then he'd come back after the races. Sometimes he won, sometimes he didn't. He'd put back on his Amish clothes, they'd load up the horse, go back, and he'd get back in his buggy and go home. But they don't drive cars. They ride in them sometimes, but they don't drive them, and they don't go to businesses and do that. They work a lot of times as carpenters, and they'll climb up on roofs that I wouldn't climb on, and they do kind of heavy work. Some of them do farm it, and they grow different crops. Most of them don't have much in terms of dairy. Few do, because you got to have electricity in the barn and all that to keep the milk cold. But they do plant. They plant crops and sometimes work them with their mules and their horses. And that's why I've got an Amishman's hat today, because I'm going to be talking about the newspaper and the special part of the newspaper. And I got to open it up because the front section here says living, and the back section has some advertisements. And then there's health and there's travel. But I'm going to get to this page right here. And I'm going to open it up to you. And it says garden. And it talks about planting seeds. Now, some of you may have had gardens this summer, and probably you're eating out of them. I know we didn't plant a garden this year, but we sure bought some tomatoes and corn, and they are good. Now, most of them had to be watered some this year because we've been pretty dry. But I did plant some flowers. Now, I got a package here of morning glories. I planted morning glories, and they've climbed up a trellis. About 6 foot tall they are right now. They've got a couple more feet they could go, but they're up 6 feet. They haven't begun to blossom yet, but they'll start to blossom. And I planted some wildflowers here, a whole bunch of them. Now, I haven't seen them. I think some of them have come up, but I haven't seen much. But we got those. Well, Jesus in the Bible talked about planting flowers. Now, he was a carpenter, and so may have had some planting crops and stuff like that, but mostly he was carpenter. But he talked about planting flowers. Now, they didn't have big tractors back then, and all kinds of equipment to harvest grains. It was all pretty much done by hand, which is kind of how the Amish do a lot of their farming. I remember working a garden when I was a kid, and we had to hoe the rows and pull the weeds, and that was not fun at all. And of course, then in the beginning of the garden, we did use the tractor to till up the soil and get it ready to plant. And then we had a pushy cultivator that we opened up the rows with and put our seeds in. And that's what I'm going to do today, because one of the stories Jesus talks about in the Bible is about a farmer who planted his seeds. Let's call them oats. He planted his oats and got them covered over, and they sprouted. They began to sprout. We'll talk about that a little bit too, because that takes some time. For the big word that we have is germinate. That means that they start to grow their sprout up out of the ground. Well, he talks in that story about a man who planted some wheat or oats, and they sprouted and they started to come up. But one night, a tricky man, a deceitful man, got into his garden and planted weeds, and didn't know it. You know, the farmer didn't know they planted the weeds, and they started to grow. Well, if you know anything about weeds, they will outgrow whatever you plant rather quickly, because weeds can thrive even in our dry time. We got plantain, which is a weed about that tall with a seed bud at the top. All the grass is down here brown, but those plantains, they're growing and they're spreading their seeds on our ground, and so those weeds will come on strong. Anyway, this guy planted the weeds, and so the man's workers, his hired hand, said to them, somebody's been planting weeds in your garden. Should we pull them out? And now normally we pull weeds up. We wouldn't leave them there, but Jesus was trying to teach us something. And he said, no, the man said, leave them grow until harvest time, and then we'll harvest them. Now I know that there was a time after which we couldn't cultivate, you know, because the tractor would knock down whatever we were trying to cultivate. So we didn't cultivate. So the weeds did catch on then. And I remember riding in the combine, which harvested the oats, and particularly that's what we grew, and it had a different bag where it tried to blow the seeds in of the weeds, and so we only got oat seeds on our main bag, and we were riding that combine gathering up that harvest. My brother and I worked on that together. That was back before we had bins that could collect it, and you had to ride with a bag and fill the bag and then tie it and drop it off at certain spots along the way, so you could come and pick them up later. Anyway, he said, wait until the harvest and we'll gather them together. And what he meant was, kind of in this world that we live in, there are some good people, and they're like good seed, and then there are some bad people that do bad things. And they're kind of like the bad seed, and those bad seeds are trying to take over and have it their own way. And Jesus said, you know, we're not going to take them out of the world now. We'll wait until the end of time, and then we will save the good seed, and we will discard the bad seed. So he said that, you know, it does matter, because sometimes you get discouraged. You do the things that are right and that you should do, and other people do things that are wrong and they shouldn't do, and it seems like they get away with it. And that doesn't seem right. Well, Jesus said, that's because God is patient, and he's not willing that any should be discarded. But he gives us time to let his Spirit and his love make us to be good seed. Now, we can't change a weed into a good seed. Can't do that. But God can change a bad person into a good person. And that's what he's about. And so I hope that you can be patient sometimes with people. Maybe in school they bullied you. You remember that when you were in school? They did things that they shouldn't do, and sometimes they cheated. Yeah. Well, we want to pray for them, because Jesus said, pray for your enemies, that they would learn to do the right thing, and that they would let God guide them in doing that. So he told a bunch of stories about seeds and growth and all that, and we're kind of like a seed that grows. So we can grow, but there's some things that have to happen. Now I brought along some dirt here, and this is just all regular dirt, and I don't have any morning glory seeds because I planted those, but I have some of these seeds, and I'm going to plant them. They're very tiny. They're just little tiny seeds, so I'm going to put some in the ground here. And you can see the flowers on the front. Boy, there are all kinds of flowers. I'm just putting a couple more in here. I don't have too many. There they go. Okay, that's good. All right. Now, I want to close back up the seeds because I don't want to lose them. I may plant some more at home, even this time of year. Sometimes I'll make it. I'm just going to cover it with just a little bit of dirt. Sometimes we put too much dirt on it. Just a little covering of dirt. And then I'm going to put some water. Because remember, things to grow need earth. Plants to grow need earth. And they need water. And we haven't had a lot of water this summer. We got a little bit of rain this past week. I'm putting a little bit of water on there. And that water sinks down in. And soak those seeds. They get them moist and wet. See, they're kind of like sleeping until we put some water on them. And like if you're in bed and you're sleeping, and I came in and I dripped some water on you, that would wake you right up. I had to do that with my grandkids to get them up for school when they were little. And I'd say, I'm coming with a glass of water. And a couple of times I poured a little bit of water on them. And they were not happy about that. But you got to have some water to get them going. Now that water's all been absorbed. Now there's earth and there's water. Of course, air has to get into soil too to do that. Was there something else that needs to happen? Let me think. I got the idea. Got to have some sunlight. Look at that. I've got sunlight going. So we got earth, water, and sunlight. And look at that. Oh my goodness, they're coming right there. You can't see them? Oh, let me hold it there. Can you see them now? They're getting bigger, and they're going to have flowers in just another minute or two. You don't think they're going to have flowers in a minute or two? Well, maybe I'll get the light real close, and that'll do it. That won't do it either, huh? Why not? Why, if I got earth and I got water and I got sunlight, why won't? Because I can't make them grow. Yeah, God's designed it so that they grow in God's time. And in the Bible, it reminds us that there are some things we can do and we need to do, but there are some things we can't do. We can't control the sun. We can't control the water. Now we can water plants, and we do that when we need to, but it still takes time. It still takes time. I remember when I planted the morning glories and these flowers, there was nothing there the next day. There wasn't anything there 4 days later. There wasn't anything there a week later. But about 10 days to 2 weeks later, you'd see something poking through the ground. Now some of that had to depend upon the water, the rains coming. Some of it depended upon how warm the sun shone, because the sun has to warm the soil and reach down there to get those seeds that are moist and have them start to put a sprout on them and come up through the ground. And then they grow. And that's how we have it too. Sometimes we need to eat the right things. We need to get our sleep. We need to get exercise. All of that helps us to grow, but we can't make ourselves grow. Jesus reminds us that he said, by worrying or anxiety, you can't add 1 inch to your height, or even 1 day to your life. Now, you can make yourself healthier by exercise. You can make yourself healthier, and you'll grow better by eating right. You can do the things that need to get rest and all of that stuff. So there's things that we can do, but still it's God. And Paul talks about that, and he says, we talk to people about Jesus, and he said, one person is like watering the ground, another person is like planting the seed, another person is like a cultivator, they pull out the weeds, but all of that is still God that gives the increase. So God's going to give the increase to you. Now I tried to think of a song that would go along with this, and I looked in my songbooks and I couldn't find it. One I found is, tell me why the stars do shine, tell me why the ivy twines, tell me why the sky's so blue, and I'll tell you just why I love you. That was a song I found, but I didn't think that was the best song. But I remember one when I was in school. I mean, not in 6th grade or 5th grade, but like in 1st grade or kindergarten, and we did little projects and we planted things, and we would say, this is the way we plant the seed, plant the seed, plant the seed. This is the way we plant the seed so early in the morning. And then we take the water. This is the way we water the seed, water the seed, water the seed. This is the way we water the seed so early in the morning. Now we didn't have flashlights to hold over our seeds, but what do you suppose we did next? We took them over to the window. We set them in this is the way we set the seed, set the seed, set the seed. This is the way we set the seed, so the sun will shine on it. Yeah, and then we'd come back day by day to see if there was anything, nothing growing. But in a week or so, there was a seed, and they would grow, and then we could take them. Now we do it a lot of times near Mother's Day. We'd start those seeds, and then they would be ready to take. They'd be a blossom on them, and you'd be ready to take home for a present for our mothers on Mother's Day. Yeah. So that's part of the Jesus thing of helping us to grow and showing us how it happens right from the Bible. Okay, let's have a prayer. Father, thank you for the things that grow in our world, for the big tall trees and the little bitty flowers, and for the grass that grows, and just all kinds of things, and for our garden fruits and vegetables that we can eat, whether they're peaches or squash or watermelon, whatever it might be. We thank you for all of that. In Jesus' name. Amen. Bye-bye, boys and girls. See you next week.